Hello everyone, here I am with some example problems for your 3.5 homework out of your functions and data book. I'm on page 100 and we're going to do numbers 4, 6, and 18. So starting with number 4, everything we're doing in this lesson is converting quadratic equations into factored form. So that's the form where we have the two sets of parentheses. So the way I always remember this is I need to find two numbers that are going to multiply to -20 and add to +8. And how I got those numbers is there's an implied 1 in front of this x squared. And this is going to matter when we move on to the next lesson, but for this lesson, not really, because we're always just going to have the x squared term in this lesson. But just realize that that's a 1, and we're going to do 1 times -20, which is -20, and that's the number that our two factors need to multiply to. And this middle number, the number that's next to the x, is the number that our two factors have to add to. So if you're thinking in your head, what are two numbers that multiply to -20 and add to +8? Well, if you would like to see it visually, you can make a factor tree, which I recommend before, like when you're still getting to know this. So factors of -20, I'm going to say, let's see, -2 and 10. This is 2 and 5, except I'm going to stop right here. And I see -2 and 10. Well, you multiply them together, you get -20. But if you add them together, -2 plus 10, you are going to get +8. So these are the two that I need. So we can rewrite this now. Instead of 8x, 8x is the same as -2x plus 10x. So I'm going to rewrite this as x squared minus 2x plus 10x minus 20. Okay. Now we are going to group and what can you pull out of this? You can pull out an x minus 2, and see if I distribute this I get x squared minus 2x, and out of here I can pull out a +10 and I get x minus 2, and you see if you distribute this you get 10x minus 20. So now I'm going to pull out an x minus 2, and all I have left is the x plus 10. So this is your equation in factored form. So you can see here that a faster way you could have done this is you could have just done, oh, I put x minus 2 and x plus 10. And I could have just skipped to there. But the reason that I had you go through all this is that it's going to help a lot with the next lesson. Okay, moving on to the next one. We want, and I'm going to do this one a little faster actually. So we want two numbers that multiply to +4 and add to -5. So remember, two negatives are actually going to make a positive. So -1 and -4, if you multiply these together, you're going to get a +4. And if you add them together, you're going to get a -5. So these are going to be your factors. And if I don't want to show you all these steps, I can just skip ahead and be like x minus 1, x minus 4. And if you ever want to check your work, you can FOIL this out and make sure that you get your original quadratic in standard form. So let's try that. X times x, we got x squared minus x minus 4x. Oh, sorry, I did it in a different order, but it'll still work. So then we get x squared minus 5x plus 4. Ah, check. Good. So this is the correct answer here. Oh, and this was the answer up here. Okay, so then for number 18, it says find the zeros. And if you remember back to lesson 3.3, I think, when you have factored form, the zeros are just going to be this number and this number. It's going to be whatever number you plug in for x to make this parentheses equal 0 and this parentheses equals 0. So to find the zeros of this quadratic, our first step is going to be to put it in factored form. So I need to find two numbers that multiply to -8 and add to -7. So, you know, we could have -1 and +8 or +1 and -8. I'm going to guess -8 and +1 because we need them to add together to equal -7. And yes, these two numbers add up to equal -7, and they also multiply to equal -8. So this quadratic in factored form is going to be x minus 8, x plus 1. But that's not your final answer because the question asks you, like, what are the zeros? At what point on the x-axis does our quadratic cross? So what are the x's? What are the zeros? So from here we can see our zeros are at x equals 8 and at x equals -1. And that would be our answer here. And if you're moving on to the next problems where it asks you to graph, this would be your first step because you want to find, okay, where is my graph going to cross the x-axis here and here? The average between these will give you your vertex, and that is just a review of the previous lessons. All right, hope that helps. Bye-bye.